You are now listening to Carlie's Couch.
I'm Carlie.
And I'm Lex.
In this podcast, we discuss a wide array of topics about life and how to live your best life.
Whatever that looks like for you.
Hope y'all enjoy.
On this episode of Carlie's Couch, we discuss the 48 laws of power. We pull out a few of them and discuss what we think about some of these laws.
Hello. Happy Monday, all y'all.
Hello. This is Lextopia. This is beside me is Carlie Carpio / CC Fierce. We are Carlie's Couch.
Dun, dun, dun.
And today, as you heard, we are going to dissect a couple of those laws of power. A lot of controversy there. So I think this will be a very interesting episode because we know all of you guys are folks who care about being productive and getting ahead and all of those things. So we'll get to it. But first, we are going to do the question from the couch, which is kind of relevant, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So our question was, brag on yourself. What's one win that you're proud of this year so far?
Hey. And so alter ego id, ALTAR_ego_ID, said he started a business. Congratulations.
And someone started their second business. So shout out to Jamisha Wade.
Yeah.
Someone else edited 2 commercials for their job that turned out really well. At Gregory Taylor II.
That is kind of serious because sometimes projects take so long to do them, and then you get to it and it's like, okay, it ends up well because people will talk about you up in the top at corporations when you put production together. Another one said, I got selected to get published again in a national security journal. That's big, and that's by Put In Work, PUTIN_WRK. And I'm giving y'all their name so you can go tell them I heard about you on Carlie's Couch and congratulations.
Yeah, so go ahead and hype them up. If you hear the full name and don't have a social media, that's because it was on Facebook and I might not know their Instagram. So then we had, shout out to Coach Ace. He was on the podcast at the very beginning. He needs to come back, but he released his own podcast. Do you know what it's called?
I don't remember the name of it, but I did respond back to him when he said this because his @ is I am Coach Ace. So you can find him very easily on TikTok and Instagram. And in our friend group, though, some of the guys were talking about it. They've been listening and said that, some good conversations around like life and sports and just kind of a good mesh of things.
It's called the Third Quarter Podcast, just like that on Instagram. Yeah.
But I think, okay. I'm about to say, it's the third quarter, right?
Third Quarter Podcast.
Okay, that's what it threw me off because I'm like, it's a sports analogy of the third quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Trav Hart.
Shout out to Coach.
Oh, I'm about to say, you gonna do it?
He got to train T.O.'s son for his NFL Pro Day. So
that's cool.
Trav is a athletic specialty coach, and he trains a lot of athletes from little kids all the way to grown people. So shout out to him.
And then how do you say this next person's name? That's a friend of yours?
Brashay was on the podcast. And she actually has been able to get enough people on her YouTube to monetize. So she was on the podcast a long time ago talking about motherhood and transitioning into a new business. She had started a business at the time, but now she is a roller coaster, I don't want to say person, but enthusiast and like a leading Black woman in that field. So I think her @ is Veloci Bri, so VELOCIBRI.
Okay. May Carter started a tech class for some new data design skills, so that's always really cool.
Mm-hmm. And then shout out to Tara Nicole Morgan. She won the equivalent of Employee of the Year for the second year straight at her job.
Yeah, that's great. And then Tayshelle, congratulations to you. She said the first motion she substantively drafted was granted. So that's awesome.
Come on, Lawyer Bay. And then shout out to Danny House, Uncle Danny. He ran the LA Marathon with his 2 kids this past weekend or 2 weekends ago. Whenever this is going to post, it's going to be a few weekends ago. But, shout out to everybody who ran the LA Marathon. Y'all are the bomb.
Yeah, I was watching part of it on TV. I didn't know they were going to show it like that. But then to be able to see the first 2 categories of people that they let, and I was like, oh, I didn't know they had like the whole wheelchair section, and then of course you had the like Olympians, so it was like the two Kenyan guys like just going crazy. 5-minute miles for 26 miles is crazy, but it was kind of fun to watch, so that is cool. And then lastly, Marian Mine said they started dental school, so congrats. Need to holler at you. Well, no, I don't yet, but look, maybe in a few years.
Yeah, in a few years, come holler at us.
Right. So like we said at the beginning, most of you are probably familiar with or have heard of the 48 Laws of Power. It's by Robert Greene, and it was published in 1998, although I believe I've heard in like an interview of his that he said it didn't really catch crazy popularity until sometime in the thousands. And if you are a frequent Twitter user, I think you'll kind of know that you'll see people talk about it in a negative way, kind of looking at it like, oh, this is really just teaching people how to be manipulative and, how to get ahead by being an a-hole, basically. But it is something that a lot of people who are looking for power or to, step up in work and in business and all of that, read and have looked into to gain, I guess we could call it, what's the word I'm looking for? Gain tactics to move around in what we call corporate America. And it's funny because when I was looking it up, they were like, yeah, it also was banned in prisons because they didn't want them to like even get more manipulative. And so I think it's so funny to ban it in prison. And then meanwhile, everybody's cool with this in real life. Have you read 48 Laws of Power?
I actually started to a long time ago because it's like one of those staple books, or was at the time, that like if you're trying to advance and do all this stuff, that you read this book. And so like 10X, like for a long time, it was like with a lot of those books. And I started reading it and I was like, not really my
You didn't like it?
I didn't really like it. It did feel a little bit manipulative, and it felt very much like it's always mental warfare in your head, like every interaction with every person. And yeah, so I actually stopped reading it because I just try not to read books that I don't enjoy. I gave it a couple chances, but I see it a lot. And that's kind of where I had this idea for this episode. Like, for it to be such a staple, I feel like there has to be some truth to it. But then also it feels a little outdated in the sense like similar to The Art of War, which, not talking down on that book, I haven't finished it either, but that's also a classic book. Like, we're in such different times. And so it's like, do these ideas and these laws even hold true, with where we are in society?
So is it recently that you had started reading it?
No, this was like years ago.
Okay. Years. So from it being out in 1998, like, what are we saying by years? Like where were you in your life?
I was like 2012. It was like whenever I was transitioning from engineering to becoming an entrepreneur and moving to LA.
I got you. Yeah, when everybody starts looking at all those books and stuff. Yep. That's true. For me, I read it probably like early 2000s, and I like loved it. Or what I loved is I enjoyed reading it, and I think for me, it was a perspective I never even thought about, which is manipulative and certain ways of even thinking about things. And I would say that I feel in general, though, now I have a different take towards the book and overall, but that's because I think that the core of like what motivates me would not be the same as any of that. Not that even was before, but I enjoy reading things that are like psychological, or it's like, yeah, that does make sense. Like, I do think that a lot of the things make sense. Is it something that's worth doing, or like, will you feel good doing it? Probably not. So like, and for those reasons, it's not like I would say like I'm a big supporter of the book. But I definitely think that it gave me a different perspective on how to look at things. So we pulled out a few of the laws just kind of randomly. So the numbers aren't in order or anything, but we just pulled out a few of the laws just to like have a discussion about a couple of them and just, what is the take on some of these?
Okay, so the first one is Rule 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Always make your opponents come to you. Ensure your bait is sweet enough to entice them to stick around. Once they're in your grasp, you can manipulate them however you want.
So what is that saying to you? Or what's maybe a different question I would say is like, what do you like and not like, if any of either one of those, about that?
Well, your first question kind of like, what is it saying to me? Like it sounds like you always want to be in a place of power when it comes to people. And so looking at dynamics like that, and so making sure you always set yourself up for success. And so I think the idea behind it is not inherently evil. Like, I don't think it's bad or any of those things, but the language makes me feel yucky. Like, ensure your bait is sweet enough to entice them to stick around. And then once they're in your grasp, it's like, are we evil villains right now?
Yeah. And I will say I agree with that. And I wonder if somebody could take this whole book and only slightly tweak it so that if the language, like, so the first thing I noticed speaking of language, is to make other people, And now off top, to me, that's like, okay. However, if it had been like, you know, entice people to come to you by showing them how you can add value, or showing them how, you know, they can benefit from you or whatever.
New York Times bestseller.
And that makes 100%. No, this is a bestseller. So like, you can't even say it like that. But
I mean, like another one.
That's why I think this is interesting, because it's really like, sure, we can say like, oh, this book is trash. And also it's like, there's a way, this is true. Like, I think it is true that when you have something to offer, people stick around. I do think it's true that when people are in your community, they're sold on, you know, who you are, whatever, that there are ways to work with them so that, you know, you both can get what you want. But saying it like make people, and saying it like literally he said you can manipulate them, is kind of wild. And so for that, it's like, I don't like those motives, but it is a fact that when people are the ones to come to you, you are in a position of actually making something happen, or having power, etc. And yet, what I tend to preach, and what we've talked about before, is that sure, even if people come to you, what you're all about is giving to them.
Giver's gain.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what it made me think about. So a different way to look at that. But I do think that it's true.
I don't think you should make people come to you either. And I think
that's weird.
Also, it's like, it could be always, like when you go to people, always offer a thing, and you can still say the kind of same thing too. I wonder if there is or I don't know if because of trademarks or whatever, if anybody could, but I could see somebody making like the 48 loving laws of power or something.
That's what
like
I was saying. It could be a whole other New York's bestseller.
Or maybe it would be like
48
loving laws of success or something, and not power. The second one we'll look at is Law 17. This one says, yeah, he just says stuff so extra. That's all. Like, I'm just pissed about that. Excuse me. Okay, 17 is keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Keep people in suspense. They'll never know what to expect from you. They'll be in a state of constant fear, which will make them more pliable.
Yeah, why is it worded like that? That's the annoying part. But I will say,
it's worded like the Bible, child. Shoot.
I mean, which is also terrifying, and like, you know, what is it? Biblically accurate angels like looking wild and stuff. But I think that what I like about this one is, like, you know, keeping people on their toes, like kind of like, you know, doing things unpredictably. Like, I can see where that might be a benefit, but then in my head I'm like, well, if you're
that's
a
totally
constant
different
source,
though.
yeah.
If it's about keeping them in suspense and terror though.
But then that's why I'm like, yeah, I don't even understand what this one would like benefit me in like a business or in life. Like, why do I want people to be
afraid of you?
Yeah, but to be pliable, but people to be but that's what I'm saying. So like, they'll never know what to expect. You're like, because you're you know, unpredictable. Okay, cool, that makes sense. But then they'll be in a state of constant fear, making them more pliable. Like, I don't know.
So this is the whole Roman Catholic Church, in their history of
that makes sense.
When people fear the ramifications of something, which in that case it would be like, oh, you're gonna go to hell if you don't buy this, and if you don't do these things or support certain things. Then yes, they're going to do everything you say. And that's why I said like, oh, it sounds like the Old Testament, because when people talk about like fearing God or XYZ happens. And so this is true, but it's kind of an age-old question of would you rather be feared or loved? Yeah. And that's and you know, depending on who you are and what you're about, like that could be different how you answer that. What I don't like about this though is keeping people in terror, because if I'm not like the leader of maybe I shouldn't say it should be like the country, but I don't know. I feel like unless this is very political, which this book is actually associated with like Machiavellian practices as well. I don't think there's any space where you should have people fear you where we're talking about suspended terror. And then with the unpredictability part, I think that's whack in conjunction with terror and fear. And I will say what you can take out of that, though, is to speak less than you listen, and to not be predictable in that you're not, like, moving in autopilot all the time. Like really make it so that it's okay if people can predict you if you work out of a certain motive of love or whatever. But, like, unpredictable in that, you know, you just take things as they come and figure it out or do what you want to do or whatever. Like, I think that's fine.
Yeah, to be less likely to take advantage of. That's why I'm like, I can see it in the church, and I'm glad you put it in that light because now it makes a lot more sense to me. But then I'm like, I don't understand how this would necessarily help me like be a better person or in business or grow my company. So
Trump. I mean, it'll help you have. This one is one that will help you keep people in line, like your sheep together. That's what that one would be for. So if you did have a company and it was like, hey, if you take more than two days off, like you're done, but they make a whole lot or something, like it's still like people gonna be scared. You know?
Yeah. All right. So number 34.
So that's some bullshit.
Yeah. Next. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. You must act like a leader for people to treat you like one. People will follow your lead if they believe you're an influential figure. And I 100% agree on this. Agree. Like even down to like if you're somewhere that you're not supposed to be, but you act like you know what you're doing when you're there, nobody bothers you. Like if you ever been in a place that you didn't know where you were supposed to be, but you walking around with a purpose, like people don't really mess with you. And I think that goes into life, like how you carry yourself and how you speak about yourself and the energy that you have is always reflected back to you in business and relationships and friends and in life.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about that. And it's like I kind of agree with where it's coming from, but I also disagree with this whole thing and what you said for like couple of different reasons. One, what I don't like is the fact that you have to act like anything to be treated a certain way, which is fine. But I will say that when you come across confident, like, yes, people treat you a certain way, unless you are like a black woman. And then I've spoken at so many places where people like drop their jaw when I start talking. And it's like, what did y'all expect? So it's still like you kind of got to prove yourself sometimes. But 100% like your attitude and the way you do things is you know how people will look at you. But also I don't like people will follow your lead if they believe you're an influential figure. Yes, they will, but instead of thinking about like acting like a leader, I think a real leader just cares about doing for people and giving for people. So it's like, this makes it seem like it's like an act or like you're trying to look like a thing for people to follow you, which I see way too much of on social and other places now, instead of like just legitly doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then people like follow or ask you questions or, you know, want to be influenced. So this is kind of just like a little bit of a front. That's the only thing about it that's kind of
Yeah, and then that makes me think about our conversations, though, about, like, fake it till you make it. Like, in what spaces can you, you know, show up until you really feel like you are that confident because you might not be coming out of the gate. And so that's funny. I didn't even think about all those people who be looking like something but not really, you know, backing up anything. And also glad for the check that this is written by a white heterosexual male. And so thinking about that
a lens on everything.
For sure.
Yeah. But even what you said about fake it till you make it is interesting and cool, too, because, like, when we had that episode, it's like that's your internal work, you know? Like, don't be fake to people till you make it. Like, as if I'm a real estate agent and you don't have no certifications, but you dressing, you know, putting your little real estate and crossing your arms and, like, learning and, you know, whatever, like, you fake it till you feel like you're doing the thing. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the thing about that one that was very important.
All right. So, number 24, play the perfect courtier. Or Courtier?
I think it's Courtier.
Courtier.
We could have definitely looked that up because I don't know.
Yep. Flatter. So then it says, I know that's why I said it, and I was like, oh, she want me to read this one. I don't know what that word is. No, you good.
I thought I read the last one, but I didn't. My bad.
No, you good.
I was talking too much on the last one.
Got you. You good. So number 24, play the perfect courtier/courtier, whatever. Flatter those above you and subjugate those below.
See why you have to do
appear to be everything they want, and they'll never see your true intentions.
Like, why you have to go that hard?
Why does it feels very extreme? All of this feels very extreme.
It is extreme, and this is all based on like you want people to do exactly what you say. People only do that if they, I don't know.
This is an evil
if
movie.
they love you
plot
enough,
book.
yes. It's just that you can control a larger amount of people with fear. I would maybe think.
Yeah, but then I also think it's a less substantive like foundation, and they'll turn on you quicker. So you got to be real quick.
Yes. Yeah, like as soon as the next person is doing something different, then that's the thing. And and because I'm watching Tudors, that's why I'm like in the 1500s mode. But that's what I keep noticing too. It's like, yes, certain people will have power, and they'll like commend people, oh, get your head chopped off, and this and that and that and that, until it always turns back around on them, and they end up at the same chopping block because it's all so fear-based that nobody actually likes you.
Mm-hmm.
You're only playing a certain role, and like, you know, people only respect exactly what you're just doing for them. So that is dangerous in the long run.
And I also want to think about this. So Trump, because we talked about him earlier, and like thinking about these tactics and stuff, like he makes people feel more powerful and more seen than what they are, I think. So I don't think his is just fear. I also think like he's manipulated people into a way to feel like he's really for them. So I don't know if the flattery, like to manipulate the people to follow you and feel like you really care about them and hiding your true intentions.
Exactly. That's why I think it's like flatter those above you. And so the thing that is true about all of this is when you flatter people, they like you and they enjoy your company. That's something that I think I definitely incorporate in my, like, with strangers communication, or like if you're, I don't want to call it directly networking, but just, you know, and talking to people, yes, you're going to be friendly. You look for something maybe to compliment, whether that kind of just becomes second nature, I don't know, maybe, but I think it's still kind of calculated because there's something about smiling at a person and saying something where they're immediately going to like connect back with you. So cool. But people just above you is whack. Subjugating those below is wild. Super crazy. And appearing to be what people want is crazy too. So, and the fact that they're talking about like hide your intentions. I think he talks about that a lot through the book.
That's a law too. Like hide, you never share your true intentions or something.
Right. And it's like, if we're not just playing poker, like this is in real life, sure, there are times when you might need to keep your intentions discreet.
Discernment,
but
baby.
Discernment and discretion are different from not telling people anything about what you really want to manipulate them is kind of wild.
Because I feel like that's a lose-lose too. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll do the next one since I set you up on the last one accidentally. Law number 9, win through actions, not through argument. Arguing your point rarely changes anyone's mind. That's a fact. Even when you appear to win, you lose because you stir up resentment. A far better way of getting others to agree with you is to demonstrate your point without saying anything. People believe what they can see. Win through your actions and never through argument.
See, I actually really like this one because I feel like that's so true in the sense that like arguing doesn't ever make things better. And it just like the resentment and the frustration and all the stuff. But I do think actions, and that's like the best apology, right? We talked about like that's the best way to apologize is through actions. The best way to demonstrate love is through actions. The best way to be about your business is through actions. So why would that not be the best way to win something?
Yeah, this one doesn't have as many like, and then you will stomp them in the ground. Like none of those points. And it is a fact that most people arguing with you, they're not trying to actually learn a thing. And you could tell when people are and when they're just like, okay, you're not going to read or listen to what I'm saying, so there's no point.
For all y'all who argue with people on the internet.
And not even just you lose because you stir up resentment, but now because of the internet and online and everybody seeing your conversations and stuff, you also like just stir up like, oh, you look salty, or you look like, what's another word? Like you're just like too like turned up, like, okay, like he got you riled up, and it's just like, it just isn't really a good look.
That reminds me of that old quote. It's like when you see two people arguing, both people look like fools. You can't tell.
Yeah, anytime, and especially because most of the time people arguing like on Twitter is something actually also that's like, damn, it still look bad on you for some reason. But I also will say that maybe, because for some social justice stuff, sure, but like in general, it's like maybe don't be trying to win an argument, but like Carlie said, make sure your day-to-day actions or your actions around or whatever it is that you believe or think just line up, and like that just speak. So, and then if somebody's like, maybe it is blah, 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 then you talk to them, right? Not just some people are like, no, this is what's real. And it's like, okay, but I did this.
Yeah, so that's the first one. I'm like, yeah. Okay, and then this last one is 11.
Wait, but hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off, but also keep in mind too, the little blurb we say is just a blurb. So I don't know if the rest of the page,
whole, so we're not.
He might have at the end been like, and then
so listen,
they go to hell and blah, blah, blah.
So whenever I stopped reading the book, I donated that hoe. So I don't have the book. So we looked it up online and then copied from there.
It's little blurbs.
So go read the whole thing if you want to make your own judgments. We're doing this off of Lexi reading the book, us having the actual law, and then the little blurb. So yeah, he might say some wild shit after that. Okay, so the last one that we have on here to talk about is 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Keep people dependent on you. They will never try to cross you. Never let them learn how to depend on themselves.
That is very true.
don't know. I don't know about that.
It's a true fact. Like,
if you're a pimp, like, I don't like.
It's a true fact that because if you're in that situation, what it's saying, if people have to depend on you, they don't cross you because they need you. So this is making people need you. And a lot of people in day to day, we've talked about like codependent relationships, like in different levels and in different types of spaces where we've never talked about that as a good thing, to need somebody and or to want people to like need you like that. But then you could talk about like government resources and things like that sometimes. And it's like, well, it isn't a good thing to be dependent upon resources or for your life, or even women in certain situations with partners. That's dangerous. Like, it's not a good thing to be dependent. And yet it's like very hard for a lot of populations or people based on where you are, your background, etc., to get out of those situations. So to push this is, I think, terrible. I think it's a fact, but it's not a good practice.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would agree that it's necessarily a fact, because I feel like if you are like controlling resources to a certain thing and making people dependent, and then they see that, then it's like an uprising. It's a bunch of resentment and things, and then they might actually try to overthrow you and kill you. Or if you're a government,
but that's why
you know
I said don't let them learn how to depend on themselves. So like I imagine it's almost like if you're, you know, like you see stuff about like people kind of kept in the dark, or like, you know, they're not
like
seeing,
intentionally, like whenever they wouldn't, like back in the day, let slaves read, like it was against the law, or women couldn't have conversations with each other.
Catholic Church.
You know what I actually learned is that gossip and all of this talk about women being chitty chatty and chicken heads and all this stuff is patriarchy, duh. But because back in the day they didn't want women congregating and having thoughts for themselves and informing each other about, you know, what's good for the community or how to change things. And so actually, like, I see this in action. But when I think about, like, if this makes sense, if you think about like jobs, relationships, love, maternal health care, all those things, like none of this is done in love, and I don't think it's supposed to be, right? It's just a power, right? And how those things can be mutually exclusive. So I don't see this is a lasting winning strategy
to some
degree.
And even I think it was today I saw some Black people still talking about like how Trump things were better, or they got money and all this and that, and it's like, bro, you just want people to be smarter, to think about like really, like you gonna skip and jump past all that stuff because you need X. And so imagine if people were in positions, which unfortunately we're not, like people were in positions where we weren't thinking anything about money, resources, like your housing situation, stuff like that, then nobody would fall for any of that stuff, because I don't need anything. I don't even need to be taught that I should think you're gonna give it to me.
Now you have to, because of the way that society's set up.
Yeah, or for some people, it's like, damn, I can't be mad that they think about certain things a certain way, because unfortunately, like, that's what they need.
But then also for everybody who still thinks that Trump gave that money, he didn't. It was something else that got passed it wasn't him. So like, that's not what happened.
Don't argue your point.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, never mind.
Look,
never mind.
Our listeners know.
So yeah, y'all right. I'm just preaching to the choir at this point. But
right. Y'all know that's some BS.
Thank y'all for entertaining this. I thought this was a fun episode, and I think it's cool to look at these, what I would consider like staples in culture, or like pivotal points in mindset for how society and culture and things move. And my takeaway is some of it makes sense, but a lot of it is based in fear and power and not in love. And so that's why I didn't like the book. And obviously the language is crazy. It sounds like a medieval torture device. But my favorite word from my yoga teacher training many eons ago was viveka. It's a Sanskrit word, and it means you take what nourishes your soul and you leave everything else. And so while you might not agree wholeheartedly with a lot of these things or certain books or certain things, I think there's always something that you can glean and learn, even if it's just to, you know, because you like psychology and stuff like that. So I think it could be a good read for something like that.
Yeah, but also, is it pronounced, what, viveka? With how you describe that term, it's like, if my soul is where it is now, like I would read a little bit of that, and it's like, and this is too icky, so it's not gonna feed me, you know.
Look, and it didn't feed me at all. But reading these,
I think it just depends on how you go through it. I just think, and maybe actually it's kind of educational to think about it as like, dang, this is how people make decisions, other people. And I think the weirdest part about this is like, so many people talk about how icky the book is, or they don't like this approach, and yet sometimes, and this is with a lot of different things, but sometimes we feel kind of stuck in a society where it's like, dang, but this really, like how people move, and you feel like people feel like they are taking some kind of a loss because they're moving differently. And it's really one of those things where it's like, and again, for a lot of things, we just need more people to be coming from places of love things to change, you know, towards that direction. So I think it is important for each person to, you know, look at corporate work or life and relationships from the way that makes sense for you.
Yeah, and like look at it from both lenses, but I also challenge you to even like, especially politically, like look at things that are not necessarily just the way you always look at stuff, to challenge yourself to keep learning and keep growing. And hit us this week at Carlie's Couch. If you are like a super 48 Laws of Power supporter, I want to hear from you. If you're not and why, maybe I want to hear about that as well. So just hit us at Carlie's Couch across all the platforms.